welcome to Paulogia and another edition of Ham and Egg News, where we react to Ken Ham reacting to things.
Guys, YouTube went down.
YouTube did what?
It turns out that I haven't made a proper appearance on the Paulogia channel in months. I guess YouTube just couldn't take it. It didn't even know what was going on anymore. So don't worry, everybody. I'm back. It's going to be okay. I've got this.
But if we save YouTube, that means it works for the Answers in Genesis crew, too.
Oh, well, you know what? You got to break some eggs.
Break some eggs. I see what you're doing. Shall we see what Ken is up to today?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even wait. And by I can't even wait, I mean, I'm not even sure what I'm doing here. Oh, yeah, that's right. If I'm not here, YouTube's going to collapse onto itself. Fine, let's do it. I'll take one for the team. Let's go.
Hi, and welcome to Answers News. We're all back, so that's a good
right.
thing.
We're back. We're here.
Yep,
We're
we're
back.
here.
It's been a long time since all three have been on the panel. They must have heard you were coming and got the band back together.
Perhaps. Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
We're putting the band back together.
We're on a mission from God.
Who knows? I know. I'm a pretty big deal. What do they refer to me as? Oh, that's right. I'm an atheist participant. That's right.
Hey,
we really
everybody.
do need...
The atheist participant's going to be here.
Yeah, that's right. The atheist participant and the disgruntled father are back together again. Let's get the band back together, guys. This is a big deal. This is kind of a big event.
And we have a wonderful studio audience joining us today, so clap, make yourselves known.
There they are. All right. There's hundreds of thousands of them.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah,
Right.
they all fit in this room.
They're crappy at counting.
The capacity of that room, I believe, is 900.
Yeah, they're not great at math, so whatever. It's fine.
They're only wrong based on orders of magnitude, though.
Yeah, well, that's just par for the course. Like, who even cares anymore?
6,000,
When they're just, like,
4.3 billion.
The Ark and the Creation Museum are the best way to witness to non-Christians. And actually, we
That's
found
powerful.
about 30% of people who come to the Ark are non-Christians.
Does he really think that those people are coming there to be convinced or are going to be convinced by coming there? A lot of us are skeptics. You know, we want to go and see things for ourselves to ensure we're on strong footing when we criticize something. We go there to gather information, and they're not going to come back. They're coming there specifically because it's, you know, it's novel.
Well, when I visited the Creation Museum, no one took a survey for me. Like, there was no form to fill out.
Interesting.
Like, I don't know exactly where they're getting that demographic from.
I wonder where. I wonder if they have something on their website
Or just hear me out. Maybe he pulled it out of his butt.
What? I don't believe you. Ken Ham would never make anything up. That's completely against his character. I refuse to believe you. No. Bad, Paul. No.
I feel like if they were getting converts, that they would be having those converts be spokespeople.
They'd build a statue. Are you kidding?
Right? Like, if they could legitimately find people to say, well, I was an atheist this morning, but now I went through the Ark, and now I believe in Ken Ham's version of Christianity, they're going to interview that person.
Yeah, could you imagine? Like, they would parade that person out in front of everybody, I think. It seems like a reaffirmation park. It's just a place where you can go if you want to reaffirm things that you already believe. I really, really ardently do not believe that they have the tools to convert people. I don't think any atheist has walked through the doors, or even any evolution-believing, history-believing Christian has walked through the doors of that park and thought to themselves, you know what, this makes sense. I changed my mind. I don't think so.
If anyone listening to this was an atheist but became converted through Answers in Genesis ministry, I would love to interview.
Oh my gosh, I would love to do that. Absolutely. If you went to the Ark Park or the Creation Museum as an atheist and you converted to Christianity because of your experience, please contact me. You can talk to myself and Paul on my channel or on this channel or on the Non Sequitur show, wherever you want. We can make that happen. I would love to hear that story.
Tiny Hawaiian gecko accidentally calls a bazillion people from hospital phone.
Speaking of accurate counting, here we go with a bazillion people.
Bazillion people. Imaginary time. Imaginary numbers. That's an imaginary number.
Crazy gecko. What was
Yeah.
it thinking when it called? I could save 15% or more on my car insurance.
That's probably why.
I knew that was coming. As
This is what I'm here for. I'm here for Bodie jokes. He's the best. You can't out fallacy Bodie. Bodie's the only person I know who fallacies. No one can fallacy a fallacy like Bodie.
Bodie's the one who Even at a dad joke convention can make everyone kind of squirm uncomfortably.
I know. He makes Vice Rhino be like, here's the king of dad jokes. Scepter, this is yours. You've got this. I'm sorry. I shouldn't even try. Although I'm pretty certain he couldn't out dick choke him. There's just no way. He's got that. He'll always have that scepter, so.
Bodie, I missed your puns. You have a pun?
Well, yeah, hopefully I'll throw one or two out there.
Yeah, well,
That was the time that Bodie should have come up with a pun. Like, now I'm disappointed. He's trying, man.
Not only is he trying, I always remember that he's basically doing this a monkey dance for his father-in-law to keep his job.
But, he chose this. He could have got into it. He's an engineer, for goodness sakes.
Not every engineer is above average, statistically.
Not every engineer gets a job in engineering.
And,
some of them work for their father-in-law.
not every geneticist was the best geneticist.
You're saucy today.
Just statistically,
Saucy
that has
Paul.
to be true. I'm not,
Saucy Paul. I'm not applying it to this situation. I'm just saying, in the world, not every geneticist that got a PhD is a good geneticist or an honest one.
They said, looking forward to being here in person and listening to the three great minds.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
I like how even Georgia laughed. Georgia was like, that doesn't make any sense.
Canadian profs bully female student into silence after she brought up abortion in class. So basically, we don't know exactly what all she talked about.
So we do know what she talked about and in what context she was talking about it. Because in the article they linked, I'm not going to lie, I only glanced through the actual article. What I did was I went straight to the transcript because the transcript's the important thing because that's what they're talking to. It was a class where we are talking about how to best educate children who are autistic. That was the topic of the class. So let's keep that in mind going forward when we listen to the rest of what they have to say about what happened.
With abortion, but she brought it up, and they said to her, these professors, that made the classroom unsafe because she started talking about abortion.
I have listened to the full transcript, and I have to say that I disagree with their use of the word unsafe while they were conversing with her about how she was conducting herself in this class. However, let me qualify that with the fact that she had had a history of changing the topic of conversation in classes to bring them towards her Christianity. One specific example that was laid out in the transcript in a class where they were speaking about Inuit Native Canadian culture. She interrupted the class to bring up the fact that she saw a connection between the heritage and stories and beliefs of the indigenous people and the story of Jesus. Instead of acknowledging, listening to, and respecting that indigenous culture that she was there to learn about so that she could respect those indigenous people when she was teaching them, she decided to disrupt the class to talk about how it related to the crucifixion of Jesus.
If someone's a disruption in class, a professor is eventually going to have to chat with that student, regardless of the topic of the distractions.
So I believe that you could probably insert ideology here, and the situation would have been the same. This was just probably the last straw, which is convenient for them because they can hold it up as a Christian being persecuted for having the audacity to speak about abortion because they don't bother to put it in context. Because if you put it in context, then you're probably no longer really going to side with her. If I'm consistently derailing those conversations and that learning opportunity for the other people that paid to be there so that I can push my ideological perspective, then somebody really should take me aside. And I think if you listen to the conversation that these educators had with her, they were intensely respectful. She didn't even have any consequences.
I had a difficult time in the moment, and even now, seeing the connection between what we were talking about as a group and even the content of the whole class and how that was connected to abortion.
So can you explain?
Yeah, sure.
How should they have approached this? Do you just allow classrooms to just degrade into insanity where no one is learning anything at all? But instead, it's just a platform for everybody to proselytize their ideological perspective. Somebody is consistently derailing learning opportunities for everybody else in the class. You approach them about that, And immediately, you're accused of discriminating against them or trying to silence them or try to stifle their free speech. If you listen to the audio, the vocal inflection of the women who are speaking to her is not that of somebody who is threatening. It's not. There's no way that this could have been a comfortable conversation. And then at that first time, they pull her aside to have a conversation with her about it, to make the choice to record it, and then immediately release that recording so that other people can utilize it for the same ideological perspective speaks a lot towards her. Now, I'm sure there's things that could have been handled better by the university. There's some verbiage that they use that I don't agree with, but ultimately, she had no academic repercussions. She had no repercussions at all. She graduated just fine and is currently working in a Christian school. The only thing that happened to her is she had to sit through an uncomfortable conversation. That is it. And here we are, listening to how she's a victim because she had to have a conversation. Who needs a safe space now?
Freedom of speech is an important issue, but we're talking about a classroom setting, as you mentioned, where other people are paying to be there. If I attended a university class and every day, halfway through class, I stood up and tried to swap chili recipes with everyone in my class and said, well, I have to be able to talk about chili right now because it's my freedom of speech. Right. That just doesn't fly. Like, it wasn't that they're suppressing the topic, they were suppressing the disruption.
Freedom of speech doesn't mean that you can interrupt anybody during any situation, in any context, at any time, because you have the right to speak above everybody else, no matter the context. It means that although you're held accountable for what you say, you have the right to say it. There may be social repercussions, there may be academic repercussions, there may be professional repercussions, but no one is going to criminally pursue you. You're not going to be thrown in jail and lose your rights and freedoms because you say something.
Apparently she brought up some medical statistics that went against abortion, and I guess they went right at her.
So there was a class that they were having regarding how to effectively educate children with autism. In that class, she brought up the fact that she had watched a documentary, and in that documentary, they said that if you have an abortion, there's a chance that you will have a premature birth. The teacher previously had said if you're born premature, there's a slightly higher likelihood that you might have autism. Therefore, in a class about how to educate autistic children who have already been born, she decided to bring up the statistic about abortion because if you have an abortion, theoretically, based on her statistic that nobody can find in the documentary that she doesn't reference, you may be slightly more likely to have a premature birth, which could be slightly correlated with autism. Therefore, I don't know. Therefore, what? How does that help you educate autistic children? Even granting the veracity of all of her claims, how does that help anyone in that class educate an autistic child? Oh my gosh. I'm not arguing for the effectiveness of the communication strategy of the two women in this video. I'm just really not. I feel like there's better ways they could have communicated, but they essentially asked her the same question that I've just asked. They essentially said to her, how, even if all of that is true, how does that help you educate an autistic child? And she said, well, at some point in time, maybe since we're teachers, sex education is part of school sometimes, and we might talk about sex education. And then when we're talking about sex education, maybe we'll talk about abortion. And if we're talking about abortion and this statistic is valid, we should probably present this statistic. That's a lot of jumps. I have a right to just assert whatever I want that might have a mild factoid that pertains to something relevant to education, period, at all in this context, even though it doesn't really pertain. I mean, it's actually almost really, really clever. She's really finding ways to insert her ideology that allow her the wiggle room to get out of being accountable for the fact that she's derailing relevant conversations and denying people opportunities to learn.
Well, in that transcript, she did one time slip and say, well, perhaps some of my classmates might be considering getting abortions, and I think that they should know what the risks are.
Yeah, I heard that too.
So obviously, she was trying to speak to her classmates and give them a message, not to further the education.
That's why it's so nuanced. She had a captive audience and she knew it. She was able to proselytize, essentially, to those people. way outside of the relevancy of the concept that they were attempting to learn. And then if somebody called her on it, because religion is such a sensitive and protected subject, she would be able to accuse the people who were trying to stop her from derailing that education of persecuting her for holding that position at all. Things like that just really bother me because they're sneaky.
So almost like an educational entrapment.
We all need to just really know this statistic about abortion, even though the conversation that we're having right now is about how we're going to best deal with students who have conflicts at their home.
Right, exactly.
When you listen to them talking about it, the two women that were speaking to her, they did not know the veracity of that statistic. Let's look right now.
I guess I'll just wait here and blink.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So you found the opposite?
So the opposite. Look at this. The analysis of more than 1 million women suggests medical methods to clear the uterus in an abortion or after a miscarriage protects against early birth. Wow. The additional risk is small, 0.7%. 0.7% when compared to women who have not had the surgery, who have not used medical means to clear their uterus. Wow. Wow, the exact opposite. That's even worse. She doesn't even have any ground to stand on. How dare she? That's a study with over 1 million women who have not necessarily always had abortions. Some women have had miscarriages. I've had a miscarriage and I've had what they call a DNC, which is, I don't know why they don't label it differently, but it's called a dusting and cleaning, where you've had to have your uterus essentially kind of swiped and cleaned out. After which I had a child that I had to end up getting induced to have because he was quite comfortable in there. And this article, prior surgical abortion linked to subsequent preterm birth. The analysis of more than 1 million women suggests medical methods to clear the uterus in an abortion or after a miscarriage protects against early birth. Just the literature says the opposite. So she derailed a class with a bunch of lies that nobody would have had the opportunity to research at the time because they weren't expecting to talk about abortion in a class where they were discussing how best to educate people with autism. So she was able to just spew whatever. She said she saw it in a documentary. So that gives her culpable deniability because if their statistics were off, that's not her fault for just perpetuating them. And then if somebody has the audacity to say, hey, that's not really what we're talking about here, then she's a victim. She can disrupt a class with statistics that she didn't even bother to look up herself, that the scientific literature are completely contrary to. And then when someone has the nerve to say, hey, do you think maybe you shouldn't do that because it's not, super conducive to learning? She's like, oh, that made me feel like you were bullying me. And when they were like, well, you don't have any consequences at all for this aside from the fact that we had this conversation about it. She's like, meh. And here we are listening to them tell us that they persecuted her. And they don't even lay it in context. Period. Full stop. At all. They just don't. And I'm so fuming about this, even more so now that I'm sorry. This is just going to be the Shannon Freaks Out About Abortion episode. That should just be the title of this episode. Shannon Freaks Out About Abortion.
I feel like that'll get me demonetized quickly.
Yeah, probably. You should just label it like the Friends episode. The one where Shannon freaks out about abortion.
So it feels to me like people bringing up random topics out of context, asserting statistics that aren't true, and hoping that people will draw the wrong conclusions. I believe that is the mission statement of the Answers News show.
Yeah. Maybe they'll adopt her as their mascot. This stuff just makes me so mad. no context, because context isn't important. It's not necessary. And this is what blows my mind too, is the links are in the description. Like, I didn't have to go digging for this. I just clicked on the article link in their description and listened to the transcript. Anybody could do it, but nobody does. People look and they're like, oh, they posted the links. They must have said true shit, because otherwise why would they post the links? I'm not going to look for myself. I strongly encourage you, if you're watching Answers in Genesis, click the damn links. Read them. Don't just read the articles either, because the articles are super biased. Go into the links. Click on the links within the links to go to the actual source material and read that and see what it says. Because I bet almost all the time it says the goddamn opposite.
It's not just Answers News videos you should do that for. You should do that for Paulogia videos or Shannon Q videos or any video you watch online. Click the link to see if what I'm saying or what anyone is saying is the right representation.
100%. Do it, please. If I misrepresent something, here's the difference. I want to know if I'm wrong about something. I don't want to purposefully be wrong because it pushes my agenda. Don't just listen to me. I'm all fired up. I'm angry. I could be full of crap. Who knows? Please do yourself a favor. If there's ever anything you do for yourself, it's find out how to do some source methodology research so that you can make sure the information that you are consuming is true.
Did someone say primary source methodology?
Not a good time, RJ.
I don't want to just blindly reinforce them because it's hard to think about not having them.
Remember, Tortugans don't think about things they don't think about.
Not now, RJ.
That's the difference. That's the difference. Challenge yourself.
This is happening not just with abortion, but in areas of transgender, gay marriage, male and female restrooms, that you're not allowed to disagree.
Don't you find this is just a segue to talk about a touch point issue? So people are touchy about universities in general because of the SJW climate and, you know, the people who are talking about Jordan Peterson. So here they are. They're making a segue because this girl was in university. She talked about abortion. Abortion's a hot button issue. We'll segue that in to the LGBT community because that's going to embolden our base. Is that not what's happening here?
I agree with you to some extent, although I think you are, and you don't do it that often, you're giving them too much credit for nuance. The actual Answers in Justice, they don't talk about safe spaces. They don't talk about SJW. They don't talk about any of that because they are just against universities. They don't want people going to university at all. They've started their own, separate website to list the handful of college that is signed on to the Answers in Genesis. Here's how we're going to teach our college classes courses, and those are the only ones that that the people who follow them. Yeah, there's honestly they have that.
They sell
website.
college curriculum.
No.
Too?
No, but they've started a website that will identify the handful of colleges that Ken Ham personally approves, and this includes Bible colleges. They exclude almost all Bible colleges because most Bible colleges will teach that the earth is, 4.3 billion years old and that their evolution happened. So they are discounting secondary education completely.
So perhaps I am giving them too much credit. Maybe it's the sphere that we're in, where I constantly see the polarization, where anybody who falls on the right is labeled as alt-right, and anybody who falls on the left is labeled as an SJW, where you just see them as essentially rallying against a higher education because it'll lead people away from their interpretation of the biblical text.
Right. Their whole thing is they have to sow mistrust in science and in findings. So therefore, any chance they get to undermine the institutions where that stuff happens, they will do.
Right.
This is the same reason why they have climate change issues on their thing. They need to undermine science on all fronts.
They have a base that's really far right-wing that would deny climate change, which I would argue is just really dangerous, like possibly.
Oh, no. But Jesus
more
is coming,
dangerous than
Jesus is coming back in like 10 years. So we only need to keep this place going for another decade or so.
Yeah. Well, they think there was an ice age. What would have been like 3,000 years ago? There was
right after the flood. So like 4,000 years ago. Yeah.
That's just bananas to me.
And of course, the other thing that they have to promote is us versus them.
Right.
So
you want to polarize people.
This story just provided them ample opportunity to do both.
Multi-level win. They got like apologist bingo. Crap on a university, talk about abortion, talk about a Christian being persecuted, I mean, like, what else would they need for bingo? They would just need a
LGBTQ is center square, so that,
Yeah, that's the center square, I'm sure.
They don't just want acceptance for that. They don't just want to be able to do abortions or believe in that or gay marriage or whatever.
Bow down to.
They want you to bow down to it.
Bow down to abortions. They want you to bow down to abortions? Really? And it's a big stretch, even if you support abortion, to say that we're bowing down to abortion. I mean, let's be real. Let's be real. Like, this is a little bit hyperbolic. And by a little bit, I mean, holy fuck. Come on.
They even say freedom of speech is that you have the opportunity to share, provided it isn't hurtful of other people. Well, then it's not free speech.
Well, then it's not freedom of speech.
And this is the one narrow part where I kind of agree with Answers News was if, and we know that it wasn't the fact, but if it was because a particular observation she was making was just making some people uncomfortable at a university level, that would be a problem if that was the case.
Yeah.
If that actually happened, I would kind of agree with Georgia here, but if you dig into the details, that's not really what was going on.
I agree with you. So free speech doesn't mean that, you're free to speak so long as no one feels uncomfortable about what you're saying. You should have to feel uncomfortable sometimes. The issue is they're utilizing the fact that most people would disagree with that, including people like us, to make it out as though that's what this situation was. If you just listened to them and didn't bother looking for yourself, it would seem like there was a class where the discussion about abortion was relevant and she expressed her opinion. Her opinion was unpopular and therefore she was chastised. And that is just not what happened. It wasn't the topic of discussion. She derailed the topic of discussion. They waited until after the class and had a conversation with her. The conversation was very respectful, but could have been conducted better. She chose to record it for her own purposes, and she had a history of derailing the classes, taking people off topic to talk about her Christian ideology. But none of that is presented because none of that is relevant to the agenda that they are pushing. So you don't get to hear about that unless you tune into Paulogia. Hi, guys.
Either parents or the actual students themselves will tell me their students went to university in the freshman class and a professor will say something like, how many of you say you're Christians or how many of you are creationists? You won't be at the end.
No, that never happened. He saw Kevin Sorbo in God's Not Dead and he thinks it's real life. That's what he thinks it is. Because that's the only circumstance that I can think of where that happened. Professors don't walk out into the front of the class and introduce themselves saying, is anybody a Christian? Put up your hand. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? Do you know what would happen if you singled out students like that in your class? Holy smokes. He's bananas. He saw God's Not Dead and he thought it was a documentary. That's what's going on right now.
I'm half expecting this anecdote for him to say, and that teacher got hit by a car and died. Let's see if that comes true.
That's right. It was crazy.
They actually say that outright, and that sort of thing happens more than people realize.
Well, I would have thought it never happens.
Well, it could have happened once, but I'm pretty sure that professor probably got fired. Rightfully so. He should have been, or she should have been. Every time I get mad. I'm angry. I hope if this doesn't break YouTube again, then now I'm going to be disappointed if YouTube doesn't break again.
The student actually had a meeting with the professor as well as the department, and she recorded that conversation. And you can read a full transcript of it.
You could, but you didn't.
No. Yeah, exactly. Not only can you read it, you can listen to it. You can listen to it while you read it too, because on the recording on YouTube, they post the transcript as it's going.
Oh, it's like a lyric video?
Yes, it's essentially, it's a lyric video of just a mundane conversation between a head of a department, a professor, and a student about why talking about really, really false abortion statistics that you saw in a documentary once that was definitely biased aren't relevant to educating autistic children.
I feel like if you said the phrase lyric video of a mundane conversation, Kanye West would be like, that's my next album.
That's right.
And this was in a teacher education program. So get that. It wasn't in like a science program or philosophy or something like that. She's being told this even in the teacher education program.
Yeah, it was.
Which is why it's clearly not relevant that you be bringing up abortion statistics.
I know. I like how she's saying that with indignance too. Like, this was in the teacher education program. Like, can you imagine not being able to just randomly bring up your opinion on abortion in a teacher education program? Especially, as it pertains to educating autistic children, because everybody knows the most important thing to know about educating a child who's autistic is how to give them false abortion statistics that you heard in a documentary. That's the most important thing.
As far as Answers News is concerned, that is a life skill.
Oh my God. And autism is so prevalent nowadays too. And it's so important to be equipped with the skills to give children with autism a good education and be able to integrate them into classrooms and teach them social skills and ensure that they're learning and know how to best communicate with them and impart information to them and educate them in general. There are many victims in this situation and none of them are her. And all of them are children who need educators, who are less skilled now, because she thought what she had to say about abortion was more important in the moment than learning how to teach them. Sorry.
It's really a double standard.
Yeah.
It's okay if they want to talk about atheism or that abortion's good or gay marriage is good or whatever, but if you say the opposite, you dare to question that, then it's a problem.
There's certainly no evidence of that in this story.
Zero. None. But they don't care about that. They don't care about what the evidence says. They do not care about the children who are autistic, who are going to get educators one day. They care about ensuring that more people buy their books and go to their park. That's what they care about.
They also love to blame Canada. People can say, well, that's not really my experience here. And then the Answers News crew can say, well, Canada, they're way more secular and they're 10 years ahead of us. But what happens in Canada is coming here to create that extra fear and for the fundraising efforts is we can't become as liberal as Canada is becoming. I'm sure that plays into it.
Because it's Canada and they want people to be afraid of secularism. And by the way, we're doing just fine with all our free healthcare up here. I'm completely derailed. I'm just I'm so mad. I'm getting more angry as time goes on.
Conservative speakers are not allowed to be, even if they're not Christian, but they're conservative in their views, are not allowed to speak on campuses.
What kind of world do we live in? They just won't let people come, just disrupt classes and say whatever the hell they want to.
Stay out of Canada.
It's chaos. It's just chaos up here. We just stick to the topics that our classes are about so that we can give people the education they paid for, so that they can benefit the people that are going to benefit from the education that they paid for, and they can be effective in the jobs that they were educated for, because that's the purpose of education. Can you imagine?
They just told her in a previous meeting, they said that she'd been told to keep her Christian identity to herself. Imagine if somebody came in and said that of, say, Muslims or Jews or anyone else, or even of atheists. That's right. Just say, you got to keep your atheism to yourself.
I guarantee they would. If you were disrupting class and saying, I want to tell you about being a vegan or a Muslim or an atheist or any of that stuff, of course.
So was there any backup to it, or she just said?
So she recounted during a previous meeting, she had been told to keep her Christian identity to herself. So not the recorded meeting, a previous meeting. All I could really remember was her saying I had to put my Christian identity aside and put my teacher identity on top of that. Public school teachers are representatives of the state when they are at their workplace. And so it is absolutely appropriate when you're training someone to go work for the government to say, while you are at work, you are a teacher first. That is completely appropriate. That's the job. I'm glad that they're telling them this at the school level, because that'd be terrible for her to find this out after she was employed.
You're not there to teach them how to be Christians. You're there to teach them the curriculum that is assigned for you to teach, because that's your job. You're not there to proselytize to them. So your Christian identity, guess what? Does take a back seat. Definitely use your personality and be a fantastic educator, but your opinion on controversial topics is not relevant and not welcome any more than my perspective as an atheist would be welcome when I'm teaching your kids.
Somebody commented on here, they got to visit the Ark in the museum during our recent pastors conference.
All right, Shannon, we got through one story of Answers News and our time is up.
I was just so mad. I'm sorry. Everything about it infuriated me. All of it made me so mad. I'm so mad. I'm really mad. You should apologize to me, actually, for making me listen to this.
I do constantly.
That's fair, though. And you should.
Not just because I'm Canadian. Well, I'm pretty sure that my audience wasn't that interested in hearing the rest of these stories anyway.
Yeah, they're boring. They're stupid. The rest of the stories are dumb because they're not even about Canada.
I tell you what, audience, I'm going to go through, and if Bodie says the word fallacy, I'll just include that as an extra clip at the end.
There's no Bodie fallacy. I was so mad. I didn't even realize there was no Bodie fallacy. Oh my gosh, this is a nightmare. This is what you do to me. This is like, oh my God, my life. My life. I make bad choices.
Speaking of bad choices, if for some reason you're not yet subscribed to Shannon Q's channel, you need to remedy that immediately. She has live streams with fascinating people having complex and engaging conversations, as well as regular videos specializing in the psychology, neurology, and communication strategy of belief systems. A unique perspective that simply doesn't exist anywhere else on YouTube.
Bye, everybody. Don't forget, I'm better than Paul. And subscribe to my channel because Paul sucks and I roll. Okay, bye.
Is it too late to take all that back? Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please tap subscribe so that you can be notified when we have new science, theology, or ham and egg news episodes. A huge thank you to my patrons whose financial support makes my work on this channel possible. For as little as $1 a month, you can help me look at the claims of Christians for those who no longer believe, for those who are on the fence, and most importantly, for those who hold to them tightly. If you can help, find the Patreon link in the description. Until next time, later.